Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Tom King's Batman. Last time, pointy-ears infiltrated Santa Prisca, now consolidated as both prison and island, possibly as a tax write-off or something, and with the help of a couple villains and a couple allies, retrieved Psycho Pirate and busted Bane's back for good measure. We return to Gotham City for many different kinds of fallout.
We just drag them down until they're just like us.
We start with Rooftops, and the first cover has Bats looking down at Catwoman, who looks creepily much younger in the face for some reason. The variant by Tim Sale has them embracing in a far less weird manner because I can tell they're both adults. The story proper, with art by Mitch Gerads, begins with Bats saying Waller arranged for Selina to get life without parole in Blackgate Penitentiary instead of the death penalty. There's a silent 2-page spread of them and the night sky, which feels appropriate, like a moment of intimacy, despite being out in the open. Kyle is willing to give up the rest of her life, but wants tonight, likening it to a diamond, and wants to go out on the town with her bat bow. He's supposed to be taking her in right now, and vows to prove she didn't kill those 237 people, though she says he won't.
No, you won't.
Yes, I will.
Selina promises to give him the truth if he waits till morning, not so subtly referencing warm beds, but the bat signal turns on. It might mean a supercriminal is on the loose, or Jim lost his favorite coffee mug again. A new version of Clock King boasts about spending 4 years anticipating and calculating, assured he'll end the Batman. Yet he didn't anticipate the guy with known allies might have some surprise help, as Selina comes in and takes him out. Mildly funny, but quite the oversight on this guy's part. Hope he didn't spend too much on that clock-themed face tattoo. The costumed pair proceed to take out various obscure villains, which amount to little more than references, like who remembers these characters existed? Magpie, Amygdala, Mad Monk, a werewolf, and given some of the deep cuts here, I wonder if that's supposed to be the one from the episode of TAS. There's also King Snake, who seems easily taken out by these two, even though he's supposed to be one of the best fighters in the world, but moving on. All the while, Bats says this is what most nights are like for him, and when things aren't as busy or he's tired, he just prepares for more. Afterward, Catwoman indulges in what she wants to do, stealing a cat-shaped museum piece stolen 4 years ago. 4 years again, huh? Given the overused connectivity between characters and Bat books over the last several years, should we assume this theft somehow inspired Clock King to kill Batman? The apartment is leased to a Holly Robinson, whom Kyle says is her alias. Weird how Bats have been looking for the Victoria cat, but never looked into the cat-themed thief who steals cat-related stuff. She takes the cat from a sensitive wire, triggering a bomb that destroys the place as they escape. Don't worry, though, she owns the floors above and below, and installed an aggressive fire suppression system. So, does she own the whole building? Because floors above and below can mean anything between just 1 floor each or everything. Tearing open the cat reveals a pouch of diamonds she was saving for whenever she had nothing, and offers them to Batman to build 1 or more new orphanages, then scatters them on the roof they're on.
Dang it, Selina! You could have just kept them in the pouch! Alfred, I need you to get in the bat plane and fly to my location, and bring the diamond vacuum. No, not the diamond-encrusted vacuum, the vacuum for diamonds.
They proceed to disrobe and, well...
I had snoo-snoo.
Okay, a few problems I have here. One, Bruce is an idiot. It's one thing to be intimate with someone he genuinely loves. It's another thing to do so out in the open where, even at night, anyone could see. 2, they're doing it on a bunch of diamonds. I know, to emulate the night sky and all that, but not only is that the most rich guy thing he could do in what looks like a neighborhood of less privileged people, it has to be terribly uncomfortable. 3, the signal's up again, so I imagine Crazy Quilt is getting away with burning a textile factory or holding up a late-night knitting convention. 4, I don't think the excuse of she's going away for life works here. Like they can't just head to the mansion or something. If he's convinced she's not a murderer, he'll find out who is. So for him, it's less goodbye forever and more see you when I clear your name next week. The next installment's cover looks like she's about to stab him for a subpar piggyback ride, and the variant looks like a ghostly Batman on an angle against a city backdrop. Has he been watching One Piece and started doing that 45 degrees thing Brooke does? They have a post-coital disagreement about their first meeting. Bruce says it was when she tried stealing diamonds posed as an old woman on a cruise ship, a nod to the first appearance of the Cat way back when, and she says it was the Frank Miller Year One scene, where he was disguised as a street tough trying to save poor Holly. Maybe he didn't do a good enough job, and that's why she's stabbing his thigh. The two get dressed, but since she only has a mask and a form-fitting bodysuit, she's much quicker, teasing him to catch her as she jumps from the roof. Bats loses sight of her and calls Alfred to get info on the alleged alias Holly Robinson, realizing Selina let it slip she knew a Holly years ago.
"Oh, I see, sir. She ran. She ran so far away, but she could get away. Flock of seagulls lied to us."
Pennyworth could only find, for the world's greatest detective, that Holly left Wayne House Orphanage 5 years ago, but was picked up by police, taken into child services, then disappeared 4 years ago. Geez, what's with the 4-year redundancy? Current whereabouts are in sealed records, and it's the only lead, so he asks Gordon to unseal what he needs. Jim reminds he was supposed to have brought Kyle to Blackgate already, but Bats presses the issue. So the commish makes a call, and later Batman is in Holly's residence, though she uses a different name now. He clarifies that he knows she and Catwoman grew up together, and he wants to help prove she didn't kill anyone. He knows what Selina did for her, and says that she knows who and what Batman is, but loves him anyway. Yeah, having a heart-to-heart with a complete stranger about your romantic life totally sounds like something Batman would do. She offers a phone Selina gave her, but instead cuts his throat with a knife. And really, who hasn't made that mistake rummaging through their junk drawer? She leaves, and after a moment, Bats does too. Except he falls off the fire escape, what with the blood loss and everything. He can't respond to Alfred, who says Holly, under the alias Catherine Ann Turley, just bought a one-way ticket to Kahndaq. She's going to be so disappointed when she finds out Black Adam is not at all like Dwayne Johnson. He's saved by Selina, who takes him back to Wayne Manor to sleep off the neck wound. She explains that she trained Holly to help with her anger. When the only home they'd ever known got bombed, she unleashed her rage and skills on the terrorists responsible. Knowing Batman would find her and Holly'd be given a death sentence, Selina took the fall. But of course, things are a little different with her attempted murder of her boyfriend. As Holly makes her flight, Selina takes off, leaving Alfred the message that she and Bruce totally met on the street like she remembered, and if he wants to find her, she's bound to be on one of Gotham's many rooftops. Later in the cave, a recovered Bruce says Selina stole something like it belonged to her.
"She stole the night."
That was Rooftops, and I feel kinda meh about it. The art is fine, but I'm not much digging it myself. Sometimes the use of shading where some would use black outlines is okay, others, well, it makes Selina resemble Edward G. Robinson. Yeah, I'm the Batman's main squeeze, see? Yeah. I guess we have to chalk up "stole the night" to the same reason he's been acting so stupid. He loves her, and that makes him vulnerable. True, she lied to protect a friend, but it apparently put Bats in such an emotional disadvantage, or again, just being stupid, that he let his guard down and nearly got killed. Funny, since I figured his costume would be so reinforced, conventional blades might not damage it so easily, but then again he's got to turn his head, right? It does answer some questions about the orphanage bombing for me. From the narration in I Am Suicide, I thought it happened when Selina was very young, but it must have been only a few years ago if Holly ran away from it half a decade back. Alternatively, I thought Kyle spent years honing her skills, and in all that time the Dogs of War never lost or gained members. Though if they grew up in the orphanage together, that makes Selina younger than I had imagined she'd be, like mid-20s at the oldest. It's a real answer one question but raise several others situation. I don't think it's terrible, because I like that King's trying to establish they do love each other, but I could also do without the ways it makes Batman dumber. Next up is I Am Bane. Returning to David Finch, Danny Meeke, and Jordi Belair on art duties, issue 16's cover is kinda neat, with the big brute in the background, Robin's 1, 2, and 5 in targeting reticles, and the costumed love interests looking like they may or may not make out. And Bats looks like he can't decide whether or not standing on a heap of skulls is killing the mood. The alternate has Bats and his sidekicks charging forward. Setting aside that Red Hood's helmet looks like it's stuck in an awkward position on his head, that smile seems very off for Damien, a lot more joyful and excited than I would usually associate with him. Today, the role of Robin will be played by a young Johnny Quest in a black wig. We begin on day 1, wherein Bronze Tiger sneaks into Arkham Asylum and flying kicks Batman, something I bet half the Justice League has fantasized about doing. It was actually to save him from one of Bane's goons, shooting him while disguised as a guard, because I guess he wouldn't have seen that coming this time. The shooter is taken down and smiles to reveal "I am Bane" imprinted on his teeth before they're punched out. This was the trade-off for Santa Prisca's overly generous dental plan. There's always a catch. Saying he let Bane get this close, whether it's an admission of fault or part of some bigger plan, I can't honestly tell. Bats is confident they've stopped the villain, but Tiger disagrees. Speaking from personal experience, he describes quitting Venom like your body using a rusty knife to scrape out your soul, and Bane's only relief from the pain is the pirate. Shouldn't Bruce know Bane wouldn't quit after this? And he had a Venom addiction himself, though who can say if that's even canon anymore. We then go to Batburger, a Dark Knight-themed fast food restaurant that has one worker dressed as Wonder Woman. Sheesh, even in universe, all heroes need to be associated with Batman. After Wayne gets noticeably irritated with a cashier over seasoning named after a certain clown, he sits with Duke, Grayson, Jason, and Damien. They're meeting in a public space for a change of pace, and being sick of Alfred's cucumber sandwiches. Wayne says Bane is coming to town, willing to do anything to get the pirate back, but it'll take 5 sessions over as many days to cure Gotham Girl before he can destroy Pirate's mask. Todd and Damien fight over a toy. Duke and Richard snark about Bruce eating a hamburger with a knife and fork because it was raised by a British butler, so to draw even more attention to them, the famous billionaire in a fast food joint slams the table for their attention.
For your information, I eat like this because of an episode of Seinfeld.
They're confident they can beat Bane, joking about having been dead before, which starts to worry Duke, who hasn't died yet, and no one bothers to clarify that Grayson was only fake dead. However, as determined as he is to save Claire, he doesn't want or need his sidekick's help and risk losing them. He tells them to get out of Gotham, take time off, or find some other monsters to fight, and invokes Tim Drake, who they all think is for real dead. And now I want to deduct points from this story for reminding me of that entire Detective Comics run. After he leaves, completely wasting the food he bought, sure it's fast food, but still, most of the guys decide to ignore that warning, except Mr. Thomas. He's choosing to listen to their boss, and despite previous bravado, Grayson thinks he may have made the smarter choice. There's a lot about this scene I like, in particular Damien and Jason. Both overconfident, they fight over a toy and threaten each other in a very kind of maliciously brotherly way. But there are some curious implications about a restaurant that features items and decorations of what are, to these characters, real-world villains. How is Bruce the only one objecting to merchandising people that, in universe, are constant threats? With all the times Mr. J alone has terrorized the city, you'd think people would be protesting and boycotting until the whole business was gone. Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, Riddler. They even have walls, possibly windows, decorated with hatch marks for Mr. Zaz, the killer who scars himself with each new victim. It'd be like someone in the real world opening up a carnival about murderers where the prizes are all commemorative items about serial killers and dictators. Anyway, Bats later responds to the signal only to find Catwoman. He gives her the same warning about Bane, and she seems aware of the danger to some degree, but they get interrupted by Gordon and several cops looking into who turned on the fancy nightlight. They try arresting her, she takes off, and Jim is rather irate his old friend didn't help. Bat swings away, saying, yeah, he could have. This may mean he could have helped the police, but didn't want to turn in the woman he loves, or that he could have helped Selina instead. Or maybe something more overall maudlin, but I have my doubts. Later, Bruce is getting ready to take Claire to the first of 5 sessions with Psycho Pirate, having a charming back and forth with Alfred, who may not listen to orders to leave town. Then they get to the cave and see Robin, Nightwing, and Red Hood, shirtless but otherwise suited up, hanging by their necks with "I am Bane" written in red paint, possibly? And this gets pretty subdued reactions from their surrogate patriarchs. You could excuse Bruce being so far away and at such an angle that the details would be indistinct to him, but Alfred looks more embarrassed, like he's watching someone record a dumb stunt for TikTok. Issue 17's cover is really good. Nice collection of key players, not spoilery, but nothing much else to say. The variant looks like Batman is playing Jacob Marley in the Asylum's rendition of A Christmas Carol. It's day 2, and Bronze Tiger is sweating out his venom addiction in a motel room. There's a knock at the door, he answers, and is, I don't want to say shot, but he's hit with something to his gut that seems to leave blood, and leaving him looking dead, but he's not. Bruce has gotten into the Fortress of Solitude, much to Superman's surprise, and to compound his shock, King adopted the fortress having a normal-sized key that weighs as much as a sun from Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman. That's our Batman! He's got the Robins in stasis tubes, after getting them new shirts, of course, and wants Clark to keep them for 4 days, long enough to complete Claire's treatment. Smallville tries to say something, but since this isn't his book, Bruce interrupts, saying that no one else can deal with Bane. Because that's gone so well so far, right? That night, Alfred, posing as Jeremiah Arkham and Claire disguised as Hush, infiltrate the Asylum's East Wing, specially designed by Mr. Miracle and Batman to keep Joker inside. Wonder why he's not in there right now, because the only occupant there is Psycho Pirate, blindfolded so he doesn't see the butler's face, but I'm sure he'll never recognize his voice. And I guess the threat of Bane necessitates keeping Claire in the same wing, since Pennyworth tucks her in a bed nearby. Bats confirms all went well at the fortress, as we get this 2-pager of him near Arkham's clock tower. I mean, it looks cool, very poster-worthy, but other than that, for this story it just kind of feels fillery. Selina Kyle, disguised as a blonde, just loitering at the destroyed Wayne orphanage, is attacked by one of Bane's original henchmen, Birdie. Alfred dangles Pirate's mask in front of him, with a gun to his head as encouragement, and the treatment of making Claire very brave begins. Jim Gordon is in an alley, on the phone trying to convince Barbara he totally quit smoking, as he tries lighting his pipe. Another lackey, Zombie, aims a gun at him, but the cop knew he was there, shooting the gun from his hand and socking his jaw. And to continue this true moment of awesome for the commish, Zombie is joined by Birdie and the last of the old trio, Trog, so Jim tells Babs he'll call back, hangs up, then asks who's next. Not that it makes up for all my problems and misgivings about DC, but I gotta give credit where it's due. So you have to imagine Barbara probably heard that gunshot, and since Batgirl doesn't show up at any time in this story, maybe she's busy in some other town doing Birds of Prey stuff or something. I could have sworn these guys all died at some point, but hey, reinventions, reboots, and whatever. Duke, suited up as the Signal, drops in to lend a hand, and the goons are soon taken out. Batman doesn't know the newer hero is still in town, and the kid himself isn't sure why he stayed. Gordon, who was apparently warned about Bane off-panel, shares this sentiment, when a pair of hands busts through a wall reaching for them. I don't like this rebooted version of the Kool-Aid Man. Hours later, at nearly midnight, Batman sees an emergency flare lit on a roof some distance away. Signal, Gordon, Catwoman, and Bronze Tiger, all at the mercy of Bane, re-equipped with his Venom gear. I actually liked how, save for the bird cawing, these pages were largely silent. It gave the scene a very ominous, suspenseful vibe. Issue 18's cover sees the Luchador of Doom standing among some rubble and defeated heroes, while the variant has, I guess, bats kneeing him in the face, but it looks like they're merging, since I can't tell where the bat leg ends and the villain jaw begins. This is the weirdest fusion dance I've ever seen, and I've watched every episode of Steven Universe and the movie. Let's get this out of the way right now. This chapter leans in something fierce with parallels between Bruce and Bane, with more retcons for the latter. Instead of his mom getting sick and dying, she's, I guess, murdered in prison. They both talk to their moms in very similar yet very different settings, and the book even goes so far as to have Kid Bane make a near-identical vow to Bruce's, swearing on his parents' blood instead of spirits to conquer criminals instead of warring on them. I don't think we really needed another Dark Mirror villain for Batman. Maybe there's a nostalgia factor for me, but I don't think obvious similarities to Bruce really improves their dynamic, nor does throwing Bane into a flooding cell simply because no one wanted to be his cellmate make him a better character. However, these flashbacks are intercut with the present day very well. It could also be that I'm just so frickin' exhausted with retcons and changes for the sake of retcons and changes, even if some of them are meant to fix other retcons and changes. Maybe because the fixes I'd actually like aren't happening. But hey, that's just a wacky theory. Who can say for sure? Present day, Bane demands to exchange his hostages for Pirate, and naturally Batman declines. Being told no makes him, shall we say, indignant, as he proceeds to knock his foe around for this refusal and having stolen his life. And even though they were both on top of the asylum previously, I guess this fight somehow took them into Gotham proper. Are they fighting all across the city or something? As he keeps asking if Bats knows who he is, there's this page where he keeps saying what he's not, referencing various villains and some allies of pointy-ears, and you can safely guess who he's talking about by the context. Except for regretful teacher, I'm not sure who that's referencing. Maybe Bruce had an unconventional high school social studies teacher that failed to teach him how to dance before the prom. But really, the references feel like they just go on, making it feel like more additional padding for the overall arc. Rule of 3, man, you don't need to reference his entire rogues gallery. In fact, the next page would have worked fine, where he makes up a general comment about his madmen, and closes with Bane saying he's no rich boy playing dress-up. Well, rich, no, but the mask, the tights, still feels like dress-up to me. Oh, and if you're wondering if this lift-up means another back-breaking, it looks like Bats just got thrown around some more, as the villain gives us the declarative roll credits story title drop. One last flashback, where each man is informed of the other's existence, told how presumably unstoppable they are, and each assured they'll find a way to stop the other. After Bats again refuses to hand over Sci-Pi, Bane declares this is how his foe dies, gets told to shut up, then deals another intense punch to close the issue. Keep that in mind for later, folks. Number 19's cover is pretty neat looking. A bunch of villains behind Bane, probably not knowing he was making fun of them earlier, with a variant of the big guy trouncing them. Bane is inside Arkham, walking past Maxie's Zeus at midnight on day 4. So I guess right after he punched Bats, which ended on day 4? These timestamps aren't doing much to clear things up, if you ask me. Anyway, Maxie, who traditionally thinks he's the Greek god Zeus, is reciting Dante's Inferno from the Divine Comedy, an Italian author's work describing a journey through the 9 circles of hell that starts on the Christian-observed Good Friday. I admit I don't know a lot about the literature in question, so maybe Maxie's in a multicultural mood. According to Two-Face, whose unscarred half looks like he's in his early 20s, Batman offered the inmates a deal. Stop and bring Bane in alive, and pointy-ears will have some improvements done for them. Like what? Better cafeteria food? Live stream TV? Casual Friday for their imaginary friends? Bane doesn't really care, just mowing down the enemies in his path. Even the strong types like Solomon Grundy and the more obscure Amygdala, who I recall being rehabilitated and living in Bloodhaven pre-reboot. Even lived in Nightwing's apartment, as I recall. Though I still haven't figured out why the hulking zombie would be sent to Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. Moving on, there's a scene of Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, waiting behind a reinforced door reciting various phobias. What makes it interesting is that they seem to be expressions of his current mood. Fear of being alone, of failing, pain. Make what you will of his mentioning theophobia, fear of God. When the muscled menace breaks down the door, he's hit with fear gas, which stops him for a moment as the doctor asks for descriptions of the nightmares he's experiencing. Bane just grabs the evil nerd, delivering this line as lightning strikes outside.
I am Bane. I don't have nightmares. I give nightmares.
On the one hand, the entire reason he's here for Psycho Pirate is to alleviate his nightmares, and even without that fact, this feels like a very expected line for him to say. On the other hand, it is still a pretty cool line. Remember how Bane threatened to kill Bats last issue, then Epic punched him in a steroidal rage? Well, funny thing about that, it's 5 hours into the rampage, and Bruce is battered and recovering in Gotham Girl's cell, explaining to an incensed Alfred how he had no choice but to free and arm the asylum villains. Did he just get punched out and sneak back into the asylum later?
Well, sir, I won't bore you with the details of our miraculous escape.
Seriously, it's just like with I Am Suicide, how Bane just instantly teleported away so Bats could chase him through the prison. Alfred tells him to just call the Justice League already, but Wayne cites the fight in Gotham Square from I Am Gotham as an example of why that won't work. Once again, Batman is an idiot. 1. Gotham's powers changed to match whatever situation he was in. That is not the same thing as one guy with some super steroid, even if he can handle more than he used to. 2. You've taken on Bane alone and won several times. Don't tell me your pals with super speed, super strength, and their own cunning and combat skills wouldn't be a vast improvement. 3, you don't even need the entire league. Superman or Wonder Woman could take this guy out in freaking seconds.
Stupid! You're so stupid!
Bruce blames Bane for recent events, including what happened to the Gothams. Possibly inaccurate, but more on that later. He won't run, especially after the boys got hung. I bet some readers would question him saying son in the singular, referencing only Damian rather than the plural for all his sidekicks, but hey, this episode's long enough as it is. Anywho, even 2,700 cubic pounds of ice encasement cannot stop the behemoth, which Mr. Freeze finds impossible. But it's not impossible, it's Bane! I'm beginning to suspect that this comic is suggesting the hero and villain in this story are a lot alike, and it's about as subtle as my sarcasm. Trampling more villains of varying obscurity, Bane restates his intent to kill the Bat. What kept him from doing that last issue when he had the opportunity again? Stated in pieces over several hours apparently, probably confusing whoever he was punching at that time, Bane was done with everything. Fighting, death, venom. He wanted to move past it all, and needed the pirate for that. Instead of personally using force, he arranged for Hugo Strange to deliver him, and doesn't consider himself at fault for what was done in the process.
How can I control Strange while trying to remain peaceful?
I don't know. Tell him not to get anyone hurt or killed? That's an idea. Batman went to his island, stole his piece, broke his back, yada yada yada. Calendar Man says there's no progress, neither Bane nor Bats will ever stop, then finger guns himself while quoting the 66 TV series Bat Channel outro. Fun little reference if nothing else. Bane recruits Riddler to hack the door with the advanced new Genesis tech, under threat of skull crushing. Though I think suggesting getting Puzzler instead would have been insulting and motivating enough for him. Of course Enigma manages it, and asks he relay a message. Eddie remembers what Pointy-Ears did during the War of Jokes and Riddles, and that he deserves what's coming. Am I the only one that thinks it's weird how people in Gotham can call some of these mini-events by their marketed titles? It happens a lot more post-Flashpoint. It just doesn't sound natural for them to mention Zero Year or the War of Who Gives a Flip. Bruce's back getting broken wasn't referenced by Nightwing as Nightfall, no more than Jean-Paul Valley filling in for him is remembered by anyone who saw spiky-looking bats as Night Quest. It strikes midnight, and yes, Bane spent 24 hours traipsing through the asylum, as mind-boggling as that sounds. And Maxie Zeus is still going, reciting old literature. Surprised he hasn't lost his voice.
He starts monologuing.
Oh yeah, and the Brood has finally reached Batman for their rematch. Issue 20's cover sees a giant and ticked-off Bane sneaking up on a dark knight that's smaller than his head.
Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of a rich man's son. He be alive but will soon be dead, unless one of us teleports away again.
The variant is less story-based, Batman dropping down into an alley. Simple, but on brand. Bane gets in the first punch, threatening that this is the end for the Caped Crusader. But he's heard that exact phrase and others like it repeatedly every night for years, so it hardly means anything to him as he strikes a Dark Knight Returns pose. As they tussle, Bruce recalls the plane he saved, knowing every possibility led to his death, until Gotham and Gotham Girl. And I guess they encountered the Joker having murdered a bunch of people, so it's weird that old Hank here looks so hopeful considering how late to the scene he and his sister were. Making it weirder is narration about Bruce feeling these heroes wouldn't die like he would, or how some of his successors already have, again including Grayson. Are they still talking about his faked death in Forever Evil, or am I just missing something? And eventually, there'd be no Bat. Just Gotham. Alone. In flames. That part at least tracks. James Tynion IV would later write this title, and basically, he's just a kid playing with matches near a gas station when it comes to this city. If this is supposed to be a hopeful notion, that Gotham's being a way to win this war on crime, maybe a scene of them preventing mass death would have been more fitting. Perhaps it's meant to symbolize the hopelessness in Gotham because we recap Hank becoming unhinged and dying from overusing his powers. Narration goes on that Bruce's hopes of molding these newbies were crushed by the city's inherent carnage. And to keep this clip show going, I Am Suicide is summed up. Bat's letting himself get beaten twice to retrieve the pirate and save Claire, his salvation. Presently, the villain declares that after ending Batman, he'll kill his hostages, Alfred, Gotham Girl, re-hang the Robins, but pull their feet so they're for sure dead.
And after I do it, I will set fire to this city.
Gonna have to wait a while, buddy. Again, Tynion doesn't take over until issue 86. Aware that his foe would follow him to get Pirate back, oddly referred to as it, Bruce planned, again saw every option, and again they all spelled his death. Though getting his hits in, Bats is still pummeled, even stomped with spike-soled boots that are probably why no one wants to ever play soccer with Bane, who asks if the Bat finally knows who he is, then bashes his head into a wall. Doubt trauma's gonna help him remember anything, dude. Bruce is all, yeah, but
I'm Batman.
It's with a mighty headbutt that Bane finally drops, which kind of feels anticlimactic. Yeah, narration says that he thought he won, he let his guard down, and had just spent an entire day fighting off asylum villains, but he never seemed to be tiring, and a lot of inmates were nowhere near his weight class. I think if this is the hit that puts him down, his exhaustion could have been better shown. Anyway, narration revealed to be Martha, possibly in an imaginary conversation with Bruce, his estimation of what she'd say, part of his own unconscious mind taking her form, whatever, says Bane finally understood Batman was never done, and that Gotham Girl was the key to winning his war on crime. Bruce says that's not it. Everything he did, all he suffered, had nothing to do with war, the plane, or even his parents' death. Claire needed help, so he helped. That's it. We end with Martha saying he doesn't need a good death for her to be proud of him, and Batman says he knows. That was I Am Bane, and while I think it had some good moments, some cool scenes, there are some things I just don't care for, and other things that it feels like it's getting itself confused. It repeats the weird random teleporting from I Am Suicide. Two enemies are within proximity of each other, but are suddenly separated the next issue with no explanation. There doesn't need to be elaborate details, but something to make it less jarring would have worked. Do we assume Bane was going to let him live until after he retrieved Pirate and went to get a latte while Bruce hobbled to Arkham? It kind of ends up hurting the pacing because even with captions at the time in the days past, it never feels like much time is actually passing. I dig the idea of sending the inmates after him to slow him down, weaken him. It's a reversal of what Bane did back in the 90s. But, as mentioned, he never showed signs of fatigue, like listless body language or wobbly speech bubbles. Otherwise, it just seems like all that venom doesn't do much when someone slams their forehead into your nose. An Achilles nasal cavity, if you will. Not to mention, for a guy known for being prepared, Bat seemed very cautious over a guy he's beaten before. I can accept him considering the idea Bane could legitimately defeat him, not just because he broke his back once, but because he's a tactician and would probably be prepping to find new avenues of victory, much like Bruce himself. But Mr. Smarty Cape, who allegedly looks at every possibility, didn't call in the League, and I already stated how dumb that was when the situation was nothing like with Gotham. For that matter, why not give Martian Manhunter a call so he can cure Claire instead of this elaborate therapy session with the Pirate? Heck, he didn't even try to cut Bane's venom tubes. If that was some kind of symbolic thing, like, I can defeat you even with your super steroid, then I imagine that'd motivate him anyway. A couple chapters also kind of dragged, with a lot of proselytizing from Bane, repetition of dialogue that I felt could have been toned down some, and probably irritated some readers that bought the story as it came out, with very little seeming to happen while waiting weeks for the next chapter. Not a huge fan of changing Bane's backstory to closer mirror Bruce's, but I will give credit for the impetus of this attack being the desire to leave Gotham and its madness behind. And hero and villain here seem to be portrayed with having deeply rooted mother issues, which I can't say I'm a particular fan of in its execution so far. Weird to see a grown-up Bane referring to his mother as Mommy. But given his side of the story, it seems iffy to blame Bane for Gotham's death and Gotham Girl's mental health damage. That seems to have been Hugo Strange making his own decisions about trading Pirate for Venom. Bane had a part in all this, sure, but Bruce makes it seem like it was the guy's intent the whole time, based on what? Waller's word? World's greatest detective, everyone. Again, like with I Am Suicide, I find this story kind of a mixed bag, even though it does have its highlights, and the art is still really good. Tune in next time as we get all metaversal with The Button. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.